You know, ladies and gentlemen, of all the great British horror films of the 1950s and 60s, not all of them were Hammer. Now, this one is called Blood of the Vampire. It came out in 1958, directed by Henry Cass, and starring the great Donald Wolfett, Barbara Shelley, and Vincent Ball. Now, John Walco, one of the followers of the channel, gave the request. Thank you, John. Now, the film was produced by Robert S. Baker and Monty Berman for Tempian Films, from a screenplay by Jimmy Sangster. Many horror fans thought the feature was a Hammer production when it came out, due to its similar look and Sangster's writer's credit. The film's U.S. release was on October 58 as a double feature with Universal's Monster on the Campus. The film's storyline, set in Transylvania, is about a scientist who uses the inmates of a prison for the criminally insane as sources for his gruesome blood typing and transfusing experiments that are keeping him alive. Now, a man's body wrapped in a shroud is shoved into a Transylvania grave circa 1874. An executioner drives a stake through its heart. Immediately afterward, Carl, severely physically disabled, emerges from hiding and kills the gravedigger. Good start. Carl summons a drunken doctor to perform a heart transplant on the body, then murders the doctor. 6 years later, Dr. John Pierre is convicted of malpractice leading to manslaughter after an emergency blood transfusion, which has never been done successfully. This fails and kills the patient. As John's fiancée, Madeline, watches, John is sentenced to life in prison in the penal colony. But instead, he gets sent to a prison for the criminally insane, run by Dr. Callistratus. When John meets Callistratus, he learns that he is to help with Callistratus' blood typing research so that transfusions can be safely done, especially for those with the unnamed, rare and serious blood condition. At his trial, John maintained that his patient's death was unavoidable and asked the judge to write to Professor Meenster in Geneva to vouch for him. The judge says he already had, but Meenster replied that he doesn't know John. At a request of Madeline and her uncle, Meenster travels to Transylvania where he meet up with Oron, a member of the prison commission. Meenster insists that the court never contacted him. Oron, who was on Callistratus' payroll, had intercepted a letter to Meenster and forged a reply. He now must reopen the case. Now, John grows increasingly uncomfortable with his work because the blood is from unwilling inmates, many of whom die. Oron visited Callistratus and tells him that the prison commission has ordered John's release. Callistratus tells John that the commission has denied his appeal and informs the commission that John and another inmate, Kurt, died in an escape attempt. John and Kurt then actually tried to escape but failed. Kurt is presumably killed by the vicious Dobermans, which keep the prisoners in line. A very interesting trope, by the way. Madeline refused to believe that John is dead and takes a job as Callistratus' housekeeper so she can investigate. Now, John discovers that Kurt's grave is now empty. Oron visits Callistratus again and recognizes Madeline from their meeting. Oron goes to her room and attempts to rape her, but is stopped by Carl, who is falling in love with her. Callistratus demands an explanation of the assault. Madeline tells him what happened, and Oron denies it and tells Callistratus about her relationship with John. Callistratus throws him out. Insulted, Oron threatens to expose Callistratus. After leaving, Callistratus sends Carl after him, and Oron is not seen again. You know what's happening there. Now, Callistratus takes Madeline to his lab and chains her to a wall. Very interesting trope, by the way. John arrives to rescue her, but is also chained. Callistratus orders Carl to strap Madeline to an operating table, but Carl refuses. Callistratus then shoots him. He then straps her down himself and wheels out Kurt, now just a torso with a head and one arm. Callistratus tells John he was executed for being a vampire because of his previous work with blood, but had put himself into suspended animation. The heart transplant revived him, but now he has the rare and fatal blood condition he spoke of earlier. He needs constant transfusions and has drained all the blood of many inmates, and he now intends to transfuse Madeline's blood into Kurt. When John yells to Kurt to resist, Kurt grips Callistratus' arm. As he struggled, he moved close enough for John to knock Callistratus unconscious and free himself. Kurt dies from the exertion. John unstraps Madeline and takes Callistratus hostage, demanding free passage from the prison. They walk free, but Carl, who survived Callistratus' shot, frees the hounds and then dies after being shot again by the guards. The Dobermans, in a fitting finale, tear Callistratus to shreds. Now, again, I tell you, the great Donald Wolfett as Callistratus, very great overtop performance. Now, a very interesting history of this movie. Now, Many people thought that it was inspired by the success of Curse of Frankenstein and Hammer's Horror of Dracula in 57-58. The producers, get this, hired Jimmy Sangster, writer of both those movies, to do the screenplay. Shooting took a quick 4 weeks. Blood and the Vampire was distributed in the UK by Arrows Films and in the USA by Universal International. Now, posters for Blood and the Vampire indicate that it was considered an adults-only film in France and the UK at the time it was released. Now, it got a British X. French posters note that viewing by people under 16 was prohibited, and UK posters showed that the film carried the X for the BBFC, or the British Board of Film Censors, which promoted the exhibition of the movie to those under 16. The X certificate is indicative of the activities of Arrows Film distributors, which had by then deliberately embarked on a new X certificate path. Tempine Productions embraced not only films designed to get an X certification, but also Arrows' policy of offering co-feature programs, which could be marketed not only in Britain, but also on the American drive-in circuits. So it was a combination of titillation and a possibility of exploitation altogether. Now, producing films for drive-in theaters, of course, at the time was apparently successful. According to one contemporary newspaper advertisement, the Moonlight Drive-In in Smithtown, Pennsylvania, on Wednesday, August 3rd, 1960, ran a dawn to dusk triple feature with BOTV, as I call it, as the first movie, nearly 2 years after its American release, Revenge of Frankenstein for 58, and a second in The Beast of Hollow Mountain, the third. As a promotion, attendees whose tickets ended in 13 were treated to Dracula's Buffet Luncheon, which consisted of Dracula's Blood Cocktail, Devil Zombie Snacks, Crispy Skull Chips, Devil Fruit, Voodoo Spirits, and a Werewolf tail sandwich. Tim Hortons special, of course. Now, BOTV, Botov, was released over a considerable amount of time in a number of countries. After its London premiere on my birthday, August 26, 58, it opened in USA in October 58, followed by Germany, the Netherlands, France, Japan, Spain in 66, and Sweden in 69. The film also appeared in theaters in Belgium, Italy, Greece, and get this, Brazil. It was re-released theatrically in France in 86, and the running time of that was 84 minutes in the UK, but 87 minutes in USA with more gore. Now, curiously, the model village scene for Karlstadt, about 10 minutes in the film, used the same model set with the Globe Theatre as the 1944 film, Henry V. Now, initial reviews of The Blood of the Vampire, of course, were mixed. Review Digest in the 1959 issue of Box Office Magazine showed the following ratings. Harrison Report and Film Daily called the film very good. Box Office, The Hollywood Reporter, and Parents Magazine rated it as good. Why would Parents Magazine rate this movie? We don't know. And Variety called it fair. The New York Daily News was the only bummer. They did not review the film. Now, in summarizing contemporary reviews, film critic Bill Warren writes that although the film was popular and still had its adherents, Blood of the Vampire was not greeted by much enthusiasm by film critics, although most thought it somewhat above average. Now, reviews from the UK were also mixed. According to film critic John Hamilton, Film Daily described the movie as one of the best films in the horror fiction category. It ventures into gore and supernatural with a headlong grandeur, while the Monthly Film Bulletin took a dimmer view, calling it an essay in hokum and stating that the producers incorporated every trick of the macabre and the horrific they can legitimately produce. Now, modern reviews have been mostly very positive, but called Blood of the Vampire a vampire film in name only. Paul Adams, a historian on horror movies, said the undead creature of the title is in fact a human scientist rather than a true Nosferatu, resurrected from beyond the grave by the impromptu heart transplant and subsequently kept alive by frequent and gory Eastman color blood transfusions, courtesy of the inmates of the local insane asylum. Now, clips from Blood and the Vampire were also featured in 2 episodes of 100 Years of Horror in episode number 2, Blood-Drinking Creatures, which aired in 1996, and episode 15 of Scream Queens, which aired in 97. Film posters or clips were shown in the made-for-television film Hollywood's Creepiest Creatures, hosted by the great Elvira and airing on Halloween night 2004. Now, what's ironic about this, ladies and gentlemen, this movie had a big part to the early Betamax explosion of the late 1970s. It became available for home viewing in the U.S., first released on VHS and Betamax in 78 by the infamous Magnetic Video Gorgon Films later released the film on VHS in 93. A 2006 DVD release followed from Dark Sky Films, and theatrical trailers for the film were used in a 1996 VHS release, Nightmare Theater's Late Night Chillerama Horror Show Volume 1. Now, finding the film, unfortunately, in the UK seems to be more difficult. One historian wrote in 86 that all prints of the period had been destroyed, and the first mention of being available in the UK for home viewing was in its 2007 DVD release by Simply Media. Now, a lot of people see this movie as the link between the vampire and Frankenstein movies and the ghoul and zombie movies of the 1960s. You got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, the old EC Comics horror, the DC Comics horror, the Carlton horror, a lot of it was in here. And the UK horror, like I said, what really stands out, they're not using black and white to create atmosphere. They're using color to create titillation, and that's what this movie was. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our reviews of the Hammer and non-Hammer British horror movies of the 50s and 60s, let us know. John, thanks for requests. And if you like this, give us a like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget, Christmas time, red is a very important color, and red was a very, very obvious important color in this movie, and it worked in every shape or form. Thanks for listening. Bye.